first thing that we have to do is thank like
Oculabs.
10th level.
Research Center. Phil, Niels, Sherlyn.
Thank you. And so we were talking about the models. So you actually wanted to learn a bit about you learn a little bit about I-Ching.
Yeah.
You started to use this. You use AI.
Yeah, I started off with Claude Haiku 3.0.
A new word, Claude.
Yes.
What is Claude? That's
Well,
not
Claude
something
is,
that we normally layman would know. Like,
it's just the name of Anthropic is the name of the company, and then Claude is a line of models based on poems. And so me being the cheapskate would use the haiku model. That's there, and then they have another line called Sonnet, and then of course Opus is their highest.
So there's
model.
a lot of models, right? And even within different company, that like even with the same company, there's a couple of models going on.
Yes.
And how do anyone know about what to use? Like you read?
I would think the majority of people, they don't care. They just use, I think a lot of people in Hong Kong, they use Poe. A lot of people in Hong Kong, they use Poe, I think. And they might not even know what the actual model that Poe is routing to. But for developers, we very much keep in mind what model we're using because there's cost associated with it.
So who is in the AI thinkers is good at like models? So who is going to talk about that?
We were talking about Jeremy. Jeremy's great at pre-training and then fine-tuning. William, of course.
Okay, so stay tuned for Jeremy. Stay tuned for Alex. Stay tuned for William.
Yeah. So we're all at various layers of the tech stack. Some are more low.
I promise you, we're gonna go through this list of those people. I'm gonna dig them out, and then I'm gonna show them to you that they exist. Yeah.
So Alex and I, we're more at the application layer, and then there's guys that are like Jeremy. He's all the way at the hardware layer, and then William and Yanan. We have researchers that are at that layer as well.
Maybe AI could need a map of people.
We'll make a map.
Yeah,
I'll
a map
use Notebook
of people.
LM for
like there's a map. And then where people live, there's where Aug lives, and that's where Aug and Alex live here, and William lives over there.
So for example, for me, when I'm using Claude Code, I'm actually using Claude Code for a lot of non-coding things. I use it for creative. I use it for grabbing information off the internet, like Chinese woodblock prints of scrolls. And I have
what do you tell Claude? Go grab me some woodblock prints.
I tell Claude I want a primary source for, let's say, plum blossom divination, and it goes to ctext.org, and it will grab the PDFs, split them into pages, scan the individual pages, turn them into Markdown. And that's a very token expensive process, which is why I don't burn a lot of tokens on coding. I actually burn a lot of tokens on sort of image recognition and non-coding stuff.
Okay, let's just, I'm sure most people know what a token is, but let's just presume that people don't know. Can you explain what a token is?
I mean, to me, the easiest way to think about a token is almost like a syllable. It's almost like the way the AI recognizes some kind of meaning from text. And so, William can go into this much more deeply, but there's a tokenizer that basically translates sort of the text into sort of bits, these pieces called tokens that are then fed to the model.
Let me give you an analogy. Let me give you an analogy, and you tell me if that's any good. Like very often, all of us know electricity, right? We have to pay a set amount of electricity. You have used X amount of electricity, and you have to pay this money. And in that sense, that with AI is the same thing, right? I want to do certain things. Maybe task A only costs 5 tokens, but task B maybe costs 500 tokens.
Yes.
It depends on what it is, the complexity, but the token stack up the cost.
You can, yes, for example, and there's input cost and output cost, and a lot of times that cost is different. So the cost is different for a model to sort of read text, and then for it to generate text is a different cost as well.
It's the same thing with when you upload something and then you download something, the speed is different, right? That's the things that people normally would understand.
That's right. And so download speeds, if you're to follow on that analogy, download speeds are typically more difficult to get at a high performance, right? No, maybe it's upload speeds, but
no,
anyway.
it's upload speed that is difficult to get a high performance.
Yeah, that's right. Upload speed's harder.
Are you the computer expert?
No, I'm yeah.
So
right.
anyway,
but there's that sort of asymmetry in cost. Generally, it's more expensive to output than it is to read,
but for people who just started it, there's a lot of models that give you some free token in the beginning, right?
Okay, so I'm going to show something I have no affiliation with. OpenCode, if you want to sponsor us,
You're welcome. Contact us.
When I run out of tokens in Claude Code, which I pay money for, I use something called OpenCode.ai, and they have a roster of free models you can use. And so I've been having very good success with a free model called Kimi. Kimi, if you want to also sponsor us, we'll be very welcome.
Yeah, those are really serious, nice people who are working on AI, and yes, every bit are appreciated. Yeah.
So
we're gonna leave our contact underneath.
So if you're just exploring and you want something very high quality, I would just go with OpenCode and use Kimi's free model, and you can get quite far. But it's a terminal, so a lot of people are not used to typing into a terminal, especially if they're younger. They might want to use another more graphical environment. So you can use things like cursor, but
no, you're throwing a lot of words at me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So there's terminals, there's cursors, and then there's like.
Terminal is sort of like what you would see in the Matrix with that falling digital rain. That's a terminal experience. There's no graphics, right? The graphics are from assembling characters on a screen together in some way. It's a very basic interface. But a development environment or an integrated development environment, you actually have panels, you have ways to highlight text that's important, and you have multiple areas.
So you mean terminal is just a bunch of text?
Terminal is just a single window with a bunch of text with maybe some simple menus. That's all it is.
And then what's the next one?
A development environment.
A development environment is you can probably some of the text get highlighted, right?
Yes, and I can let Alexander. I think Alexander would be a great person to talk about those aspects. He's much more well versed in all the various.
Oh, great. So Alexander is going to come up next. I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to ask him those questions.
We will lean on Alex for that part. Yeah, I just tend to stick. I'm like an old man. I just have my one hammer, and I just well, there's a front part of the hammer and the back part. I can take out nails. I can hammer nails, and I know how to use it. I'll just use this.
I'm going to use the hammer to cook noodles as well.
And I can use the side of the hammer if I want, and then the handle. And I just like to stick with my hammer.
Okay.
But Alex has a toolbox, and he's good at sort of picking out different tools, and very good layout. He keeps up to date on all the latest tools. I just look at my hammer every day, and I just like hammering. That's what I like to do. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So what else do you? So
just hammering all the time.
Your hammer of choice is Claude.
It changes. Currently, it's Claude Code with OpenCode as a backup, and then I use Cursor to view changes. Okay. Because Cursor has. When I first started, it was just Cursor. I started with Cursor when it first released, because I just want to give the people that will have no idea what we're talking about some love. That whenever you get into a new area, it always sounds. Like it always makes no sense. There's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of jargon.
Just stick with us.
Unfortunately, I'm so sorry.
Stick with us, and then if you like if it is in 3 or 4 episodes, you're still having trouble. Like we'll
have a hotline. We'll have a hotline.
We read all the comments anyway. So please leave comment. Please give us like. Please subscribe, because that's how the algorithm is gonna actually start sharing things to other people. But if you have trouble understanding any of this stuff, that's fine. Stick with us, and I'm going to try to hold them back. To have way too many jargons, but we have to learn some of it.
We'll get Wilson to hold us back maybe at some point. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that was it evolves. My general thinking is I don't like to change tools too much because there's switching. Like mentally, you have to switch tools, and I feel like
it's like this is gender, but it's like us with our handbags. We don't like to change our bags.
You have your roster. You like to. So, and I feel like with these AI models, they leapfrog each other, the state of the art ones. So like even if your favorite model is behind a little bit now, you just have to wait a couple weeks or months and then it'll be on top again.
Couple weeks probably at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like neck and neck, OpenAI.
So there are people that who switches like tools every week, and then there are people that like you that who just like to stay with a couple of models.
I'm too old to switch too much. I'm like a grumpy old man. Well, yeah, it's good enough. 80% is fine. I'll just keep going.
Okay.
And so that's why I've been using a lot of Claude Code, just because I feel like the way the agent interface, the terminal interface, it's a very bare bones interface because it's just text, but it has a lot of power in how you interact with it and tell it to do things and search for things.
When you say text, is it like language text or is it computer coding text?
It's as if you were reading a newspaper article, you could say.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's just bare text. And that's how powerful these agents are now, right? Like, you can talk to them like a person, and with things like OpenClaw, which I know you're very keen on, like you can actually treat these things like sort of interns, and they will do things for you. And I was actually impressed too. I have not really looked deep into it, but Lock, our mutual friend, was showing you the other day, and I was very impressed with what it could do. And so that's sort of the evolution of these tools. Like before, when I was using Cursor to do coding, I had to manually copy and paste things into my code. I would ask it questions, it would tell me, and I'd have to know what file and at what lines, and I'd have to take out the lines. But then it would slowly get more and more.
When was that?
This was 2024, early 2024.
And then now we're in 2025 March, and you said you're already
2026.
2026 March.
Yes.
And already we don't need to do that. We can do this in language.
It's been getting much more powerful now, where you can use language. And I would say, like, this is why a lot of the AI experts, they say your sense of taste and aesthetics and style is getting more and more important. And that's sort of what I'm trying to get my daughter to not be so scared about AI, because you still need to have that human touch. You don't need to know like how the sauce is made as much anymore, but you need to know what a good sauce tastes like. And you need to have a mental model in your mind of how to get to a good sauce. Right, so that's very important. So
to make sure that not like Matrix, that everything tastes like chicken.
That what was that tofu like thing? That yeast kind of thing.
So you like when you mean taste, you mean like really you mean taste, like you mean like a taste in music, a taste in whatever that
music. Another thing to talk about Alex about. Yes. Okay. Oh, he's big on the AI music. But yeah, like, and that's sort of like a quality that can be hard to describe, which is why it can be hard to get an AI to do well, because that's how we're interacting with the AIs. We're telling AIs to do things, and we're trying to describe what things are like and are good. But just imagine you're talking to a person. What makes a piece of art good? Or you have an advantage because you went to art school and all that thing. But you get my point. Those things can be hard to
describe
some people say
discreetly. When it comes to like to understand jazz, to know how to dress. Let's put it. Maybe some people will argue it's an acquired knowledge. Other people would say that that's really innate, whatever it is, nature versus nurture. We can talk about that some other time, but I
think it's nature, but yes, go ahead.
But for some reason now because we no longer have to care so much about whether you know how to do coding.
Yeah, we're moving up. We're moving up the sort of the layers of abstraction to the point where it's more important to have a sense of what's a good user flow, what's a bad one, what's a good user interaction, how an app should look. And then of course we're getting into areas of like go-to-market, which is much more important now because you can build apps more easily. So now distribution and having a go-to-market strategy is much more important. That's
Go
sort
to
of the
market,
bottom.
you mean like how to reach the audience?
How to reach, how to market, how to present what it is that you're making. That's much more, I would feel, much more important now. So it's
So that's
sort of
why
shifting.
we're doing this.
It's sort of, well, that ties into sort of, and just, And so I think that's sort of a general trend,
So, like a couple of weeks ago, I started to realize that. So, like in the past, when it comes to the world of computer, there was a age-old understanding that if you know some sort of basic computer language, the assembly language, you have some sort of advantage because you know how the computer works. You know how it's the logic.
Yeah.
And if you have that logic, you have a competitive edge.
I still think that's, I would say, Alexander, we can talk, so it was a really great example.
It's an argument.
I think that now the person that understands assembly has an advantage, not because they know assembly, but their mind, it has a way to sort of structure things and organize their thoughts such that they can understand how that works. So the fact that they know assembly, I don't think is the advantage. It's the thing is that their mind works in a way that is structured and organized, and that's still very important for coding. When vibe coders run into an issue, they might complain and they might get stuck and they might not know.
What is a vibe coder?
Oh, vibe coder is just someone who is actually not really knowing how the sauce is made at all, no technical background, but not just no technical background. They don't have an interest in how the sauce is made. They just want to get something to work. And I'm not going to make a judgment on that. That's just sort of the reality. I think that's how things are going in reality.
Of course.
So the AIs are getting strong enough where that is not as necessary. But I still think the way things are now, you still need a way to build something more robust. You need to have curiosity about how the sauce is made. And you need to sort of have an organized way to sort of filling in the gaps in your knowledge and structuring how you build things. And that is you still need that right now. You can't just talk your way to an app. Although I think Alexander's working on that because he talks a lot. He talks way more. We'll find more about his tools, but he has a great tool set and how he interacts and builds things. Yeah.
I heard an argument that said AI at this moment, because when AI writes code, they write in a very uniform way. B, there might be it might not be as clean. And so in future, A is easier to be hacked because it's more uniformed. And B, because it's not as clean, there's a lot of junk code in between. And for people who are vibe coder, who definitely would not be able to clean things up, we are basically leaving problem for the future because it comes to updates,
I'm waiting for the vibe code recovery business to pick up. Yes, I'm expecting there to be a big business. And actually, William and I were talking about security attack surfaces where there are agents that are...
Maybe we'll have to get William's dad to come on, who is a security expert.
Yeah, he was making the argument, because I see that there's AI agents that are pen testers now, that they are testing vulnerabilities within websites. Okay, is there more jargon?
I leave a lot of promise, and I will keep to them. Don't worry.
So, but William, he will explain why those AI agent pen testers are not really that great. But the idea is, I think when you generate code in general, there will always be bugs, even if you have a process to review. It's just the nature of the beast. And now that we're just generating so much more code more easily,
so it's just probability.
Your surface area is humongo. And so these vibe coders, I'm not going to look down on them because I think it's great what they're doing. But if your app is no longer just a front end app, but it's also hitting the database and it's exposed to the internet, that's all of this extra surface area for something to happen. And with OpenClaw, it's 500K lines of code, and it's got plugins to all sorts of things like WhatsApp.
Well, we all hear the stories of how the Facebook
Email,
guy got his email deleted, and
there was a PM who wasn't keeping an eye on things and then had to run home. But I would say I'm not going to blame AI for that specifically. It's just you are integrating these things into more pieces. And from the I was in the enterprise world for many years. The software itself was not actually the problem. It's always the integrations that are the trickiest, because integrations break, both sides have to be in agreement and all that stuff. But that's where the actual value is. And that's why I think your eyes and my eyes lit up when we saw OpenClaw. It was sort of like the user experience of interacting with it and then it doing things on its own, right?
Yeah.
So it's the integrations that actually give a lot of value to the OpenClaw, but it's also like attack surface area. It's like a lot of shit can go bad.
It's like a smart intern.
Yeah, it's a smart intern that forgets things and fucks things up every once in a while.
No,
should we not
it's
curse
okay.
on this?
It's fine.
Okay,
it's online. We don't care.
We can edit that out. But so that's the thing. My friend Eddie asked
if anyone have problem with us swearing, let us know. But hey,
Eddie asked me. He runs a Mexican restaurant in Taipei with a spectacular podcast setup. Maybe we need to pay them a visit. He asked me about OpenClaw, and my honest opinion was it's powerful but risky. I think, and so I would be someone like myself. I would want to pick. I would sort of scan the code base using Claude Code to say, hey, what are some of the thick bits and pieces to pick out for my project? That's how I would use it. I would not use it directly, but other people like laymen, they would use it, but you would want to make sure you're in a sort of cordoned off environment. So for you, it's kind of a save time. You ask it to generate code, and then you actually pick and choose what it does, right? Well, no, I'm not. I actually do a lot of vibe coding things now. I mean, I don't look at a lot. I look at the plan it makes. And Alex is a very rigorous planner as well. So we look at the plans it makes and we do heavy review on the plan. But as far as the code, I just have automated processes to review the code, but I don't really look at the code too much. Unless there's like an error on compilation or there's a bug, and then rarely I'll look at the code now. But I don't really look at the code anymore. How much
faster because the fact that there's AI that you're doing things?
So 6 lines, iOS app that I built recently. I am not an iOS developer. It took about 6 weeks. I'm not sure I would have attempted it, to be honest. Without
you would not even.
I wouldn't have attempted it because it would have involved me to learn. I would have had to spend at least 6 weeks learning and getting up to speed and building a toy app. I would have expected to try to build a toy app and getting used to the App Store deployment process because there's a bunch of arcane stuff there, independent of just coding. And so I would have thought to just get a basic thing working and that was...
Because you built 6 line completely by yourself, right?
With my trusty assistant, Claude. Yes, but pretty much by myself.
But normally in the past, like an app, you'll think of at least maybe 2-3 people.
Yeah, so you would have a designer, you would have a back-end person, you would have a front-end person. 6 lines has a front and a back-end, and it has a database. So in classic enterprise terms, you would have individuals for each. And then later on, when I learned in early 2024 that designers actually don't code. So I actually hired a designer to help me with another project called Life Story that didn't go anywhere because it was too complex for me, but maybe I should revisit that now. But the designer I hired she was like, I can't build the HTML for you. He only gave me Figma. So now, but then when I was working with him, I realized he was most productive when I was just brainstorming with Midjourney, which I was using at the time to brainstorm screenshots with him.
Well, I wonder if people still remember Midjourney. My goodness, it's not only a while ago.
I know, and I only didn't use it just because I didn't have time, and the other tools sort of got somewhat level of parity. But now I think designers, they do have aesthetic sense. So we might get to the point where they're back in play again, or maybe they still are in play. We need to get some designers out in the field, like practitioners. I don't know many. Actually, I do know one. I do know that we can get, and you probably know too.
I have a whole roster.
And how AI is sort of impacting them, because the importance of Figma, I think, has diminished because you have skills in Claude Code that are front end skills.
So we're going to start, like the plan is, we're very open. The plan is going to start with just AI tinkerers. And then I think we're going to start with the affiliations of AI tinkerers. But I think later down the road, definitely the designers and the animators and the musicians.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Because it's AI is sort of all encompassing. Right?
Exactly.
It's very horizontal. It goes everywhere.
It got to the point that it's in every aspect of your life.
Yeah. And the way, I mean, I came from the enterprise world doing very boring CRUD apps, but the apps that I like to build are more culture and creative. That's actually sort of my passion right now.
Even in things, it's the interesting thing for me is that, like, in the beginning we talk about AI, like people go, oh, self-driving cars. And then you think that taxi drivers might be the first job to be eliminated. But now it's the other way around. Like it works in places that you didn't imagine that would happen. For instance, like the kitchens. A lot of kitchens, like
the fuzzy logic rice cooker.
Well, there's also there are automated chefs that frying rice.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
And it's not that far away. I'm telling you, in Hong Kong,
frying rice is actually quite hard.
There are quite a lot of restaurants already using them.
Really?
And then there are also restaurants that was using like robots delivering like.
Are we going to get some fried rice later? I'm a little hungry. Are we going to get some? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so I think yeah, it is in every aspect. But let's start. Like our aim is to go through all the people whom names you mentioned.
Yeah, we're going to give the audience a great base of AI knowledge that they can then reuse and leverage through all the other affiliations that we want to go through. So you're going to get a very good education here, I think.
Hopefully that you get to see what is going on, the latest, the last minute AI development, what is going on, what is the practitioner is doing.
Yes.
And maybe you are practitioners that you want to get in with part of this movement. You're welcome.
Yeah.
If you are an investor that you want to invest in AI, you're welcome to contact us as well.
Yeah.
If you want to, if you know nothing but you want to get into it, I mean, you're welcome to, because this is probably the time to jump in.
This is, we had a gentleman from HSBC. His name is Alex Ullman. He gave a really interesting talk about sort of education in the face of AI, and he had to change his curriculum. But one of the most interesting things that he talked about was the importance of having an interest. So in the face of all this AI, it's very easy, I think, to sort of give up and say, well, AI is just going to end up doing everything. Why do I need to learn anything at all, right? And so his point, and sort of my thinking is that you definitely cannot give up. You always need to have an interest, and you always need to treat the AI as helping you, right? The AI is not in charge. And so I think I was just very fortunate to stumble upon the I-Ching as sort of some sort of like my North Star of, okay, I have something that I'm interested in every day, and I'm going to use AI the best way I can in sort of trying to satisfy this interest of mine.
It's like a kind of like a glass half empty, glass half full thing, right? I mean, there's not much you can do when you say, oh, AI is going to do everything, so I don't have to do anything. Let's just do nothing.
Dangerous way to think. Yeah.
Well,
but easy to do so. I understand why, and I understand why.
This is a very philosophical question, right?
That's right.
It's Camus. It's Camus who said, life it's like Sisyphus, that you are pushing this boulder up the mountains. And then it's going to come back down again. But you have to find meanings in this process. And maybe this is the smart way to live. This is the way that you have to look at life.
That's right.
Because if you just look at, it's Sisyphus, why don't I end my life? Well, and that will be the very stupid, low-level philosophical thought.
And so the I-Ching is also known as the Book of Changes, right? So that's why philosophical systems like the I-Ching are really good at dealing with times of uncertainty and what we're dealing with now. I feel like things are just changing. The acceleration of change just keeps getting faster. And so your mind needs to be able to be aware of the situations it might have to deal with. So I'm going to talk about the I-Ching more. So the I-Ching, to me, I think it talks about 64 scenarios and the proper way to behave in those scenarios. That's the way I like to think of it. And so there's one hexagram called oppression. So oppression is a state where the environment is not good for you, but what the I-Ching says is you still always need to be ready, and you still always need to behave in a proper way, because the Book of Changes says it will change eventually. So you always need, so that's why I like these systems. I think we need these kinds of systems more and more now in the face of this kind of change. You need to be able to have some kind of resilience and ways to adapt to situations. And
I think we're living in a very interesting time. Is that we used to, as a Chinese, we used to think, a lot of our old scriptures, those are things, those are myths, and those doesn't really go with the modern time. But we kind of get to the point that right now all these things seems to start to make sense again, and so it's and another thing is quite interesting is that I start to see a lot of AI people who are in AI are using AI just like you, using AI to understand their core belief system or their, from their family. And so I've seen another guy online right now doing a lot of deep dive in Buddhism.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Send me the link. I'm interested.
Yeah. So I think it's and then there are and then you're doing it with I-Ching, and I think it's very interesting that you would have thought that, hey, all this highly technological environment, you would not.
Well, I'm getting a little older. I sort of start seeing things over and over again, and then I sort of get bored with things, and so I try to find these systems that are timeless, like the I-Ching.
But I think I see this in almost all area, like Ray Dalio. He's talking about it's not
cycles. He talks about market cycles, yes.
And the market cycles are not just a 10-year cycle, but a more 60-year cycle, more 300-year cycles.
Wow. 60-year cycle, that's
very Chinese.
That's a very Chinese, the sexagenary cycle, yes. Yeah.
So maybe this is a good time to have a break.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely have Aug around.
Yes.
This is like AI.
You have me on calls. Yes.
But it's more like Aug's friends. So
I've been told that's one of my special abilities is just to
people
meet people and just walk around and ask people what's happening. Yeah.
So this is basically like people meet people Aug editions.
Yeah.